I'm going to read chapter 18 from the Green Ember. Carter is called An Orphan World. Heather came awake slowly, her eyes still closed, trying to remember where she was and how she'd gotten there. She opened her eyes and found she was in a small, neat room, and Pickett was asleep in a bed across from her. In the fog of waking, she noticed that the beds were arranged much like their room on the second floor of their home in Nick Hollow. She smiled. Then it began to come back to her, the terrible ordeal of their flight, the fiery end of the life they had known. It started again, the now familiar churning of sadness, anger, and hopelessness in her stomach. She looked around the small room, and what she saw had a settling effect. There were, she saw by the faint light streaming in, paintings on the wall and subtle beauties all around. Her mother painted, but not like this. Heather had been so tired, and it had been so dark the night before, she'd barely cared that there was a bed. She was asleep when her head hit the pillow. Now she stared long at each painting, captive to the beauty on display and the curious feeling of hope it stirred within her. Who could make such things, she heard. She turned to see Pickett leaning on his elbow, staring past her as the colorful wall came alive in the growing light of morning. I don't know, she said, but I'm very glad they have. Pickett said nothing more, and both rabbits looked on. One painting in particular held her attention. It was a large, colorful, and amazingly realistic. It depicted a hollow home in a forest surrounded by several others, with a great garden between them all. Heather felt as though she might easily walk right into it, and she really wanted to. It appeared to be the same small glen depicted in the painting above the fireplace in their Nick Hollow home, the painting Mother had often stared at, weeping. It wasn't from the same angle, but Heather believed it might be the same place. The longer she stared, the more sure she was. She noticed in a corner what she guessed must be the painter's initials, F.S. There was a knock, and Heather crossed to open the door. Good morning, Emma, Heather said, delighted to see her. Heather had led the exhausted rabbits to the room last night when they'd fallen asleep immediately. Good morning, friends, she said cheerfully. I hope you slept well. You've certainly slept long enough. I feel rested, thank you, Heather said, and thank you so much for taking such great care of us. I'm delighted to serve, Heather said, reaching an arm around Heather. And how's fractured foot fellow, she asked, smiling over at Pickett. Pickett didn't smile, but he said, I'm feeling well, thank you, Emma. Glad to hear it, she said, raising her eyebrows at Heather and crossing over to where he sat. May I look at it? Sure. She undid the wrapping and examined the injured foot, then redid the bandage as Pickett winced here and there, always trying to pretend it didn't hurt nearly as much as it did. Dr. Zeiger will be here to see you later, Pickett, she said. He's a bit strange in the way he talks. He's from far away from here, further still than the two and your funny way of speaking, but he'll take good care of you. Thank you, said Pickett. He was still pouting. Heather noticed, but some of his anger appeared to have subsided. He seemed not so much resentful and angry as regretful and weary. She worried for a moment that he would never be anything but the pouting, dour rabbit she saw before her. Where was her carefree brother she'd always known? Gone, along with the rest of her life, she supposed. I have something else for you, Emma said, disappearing out of her room for a moment. She returned with a pair of ornately carved crutches. Heather was amazed at how beautiful they were. They featured intricate carvings of patterns, a clever design of whittled wonders marking them from top to bottom. Now you'll be able to get around on your own without two girls having to carry you about. Emma smiled at him, and to Heather's surprise, he smiled back. Thanks, Emma, Pickett said, and he looked truly grateful. Maybe there is hope for this old Pickett, Heather thought, until he sees Smalls again. Okay, friends, Emma said, would you like me to bring you some food, or can you hobble down to the savory den? Pickett started to speak, but Heather beat him to it. We'll come down. She didn't want to stay cooped up and didn't think it would do for Pickett to have that option, more than his foot needed healing. As you like, said Emma. I'll be back in a few minutes to fetch you some starving pilgrims. There's clean clothes in the drawers, including clean drawers, she said with a mischievous wink. She was ready to leave. Emma, said Heather, can I ask you something? Sure. These paintings, she pointed at the wall. Who did them? Oh, so many, said Emma. I'm not sure of all their names. They'd know every one of them up in the galleries and at Lighthall. Lighthall? Emma asked. A place set aside for this sort of thing. The best of them, I think, Emma explained, though it's shut up at the moment for repairs. Heather looked them all over. There's 1,000 untold stories in those places. I suppose so. Are you a tale teller? No, she said, but she said it too quickly. Emma eyed her doubtfully. Oh, Heather has great stories, said Pickett. She's told them to me since I was a baby. She's told them to our baby brother, too. You should hear her story about why the leaves change color in the autumn. She's an amazing storyteller, but she doesn't like being put on the spot. It's the one way it's actually possible to shut her up. We'll see about that, Emma said slyly. I'll have you, she pointed at Pickett, walking, and you, pointing at Heather, telling stories in no time. Emma crossed her arms. You poor, weary, pathetic, sad, happy, strange, wonderful travelers will be my new project. Grand, Heather said with a sigh. Heather laughed a little nervously, then turned again to the paintings. What about this one, she said, pointing to the large painting in the center of the wall at the foot of her bed. Heather was sure it featured her family home in the East. Do you know anything about this one? Like what place it's showing? Emma crossed to look with Heather as Pickett tried out his crutches. Sorry, Heather, I have no idea, she said. I mean, I know it's from the Great Wood before the fall of King Jupiter and before the terrors, but I haven't been in here much, and I wasn't the best for listening to my lessons in art. I know some of the major ones. I've been working so hard to become a doctor, you see. You'll make a good one, I'm sure, Pickett said, successfully crossing the room with the crutches after a few stumbling efforts. Of course you will, Heather agreed. They looked at the painting together. Does this mean something to you? Emma asked. I think it's a picture of our old home, Heather said quietly. In the Northwest? No, in the East, in the Great Wood, I suppose, where our parents lived and where I lived when I was a baby. Pickett shuffled over to join them. He stared at the painting, longing written on his face. It's lovely, Emma said. Yes, Heather agreed. Mother had a painting of her own that showed this glen. At least I think it's the same one. It hung over our fireplace at Nick Hollow. One day I found her crying, looking at it. She told me then if we ever couldn't find her to look there. She pointed at the tree home depicted in the lower corner of the large painting. Emma nodded. Pickett noticed the initials at the bottom. Who is F.S.? That I can tell you, said Emma. I'm not such a silly one that I don't know the leading artist of the Great Wood's golden age. That would be Finbar Smalls, the Magi of the Meadows. The painters here all adore him. Heather and Pickett exchanged brief, questioning glances. Is Finbar Smalls here? Heather asked. No. He was killed in the after-terrors of the fall of the King Jupiter along with so many others, Emma swallowed, including my whole family. I'm so sorry, Heather said, squeezing Emma again. Do you ever go back to the Great Wood? It looks so lovely. The Great Wood is in ruins now, she said hoarsely. It's charred and decaying in both appearance and soul. I think rabbits love Finbar Smalls because he reminds them of what it was. Finbar Smalls, Pickett asked into the silence. Is the whole world orphaned? And I'll stop for today, Carter. I love you. Can't wait to see you again. Bye.